Hello everyone, Jim here. Well, after a 10-year absence, Mel Gibson has, pardon the pun, arisen. And he's back with another movie. I recently saw his newest movie, Hacksaw Ridge, starring Andrew Garfield as Desmond Doss, the first conscientious objector to win the Congressional Medal of Honor for service in World War II. And this movie is very, very good. It's definitely one of the best movies I've seen from this year, but it's not quite perfect. To sum up the story, and it's all based on a true story, and the movie is very accurate to the real account. After seeing this movie, I started researching the true story behind it to see how accurate it was, and it's pretty close. I'm sure there's a couple things that are a bit off, but Mel Gibson seems to have done a very good job at staying pretty close to the real account, and which actually surprised me. There were a lot of things on screen I thought had to have just been Hollywood flourishes, but then I looked them up. No, these things really happened. Well, let's get the negative out of the way. The romance plot between Andrew Garfield and Teresa Palmer towards the beginning of this movie, I did not think was very well done. And I know Andrew Garfield is definitely capable of being a very charming fellow. One of the big positives about the Amazing Spider-Man movies, and I'm glad that series is not continuing, don't get me wrong, was there was good romantic chemistry between him and Emma Stone in those movies. That was actually much better than the Tobey Maguire, Kirsten Dunst chemistry in the previous Spider-Man series. It always felt very natural. Whereas here, his romance with Teresa Palmer it feels like so old-fashioned, old shucks kind of deal, idealized. It just does not feel realistic. I know some people think that the 40s were a simpler time when it was really like that, but I highly doubt it. Personally, it just seems like a very naive whitewashing, pardon the pun, of history with that kind of sentimentality. But I didn't hate it. I was like, this could be done a little better if they humanize these characters a little more, but it's certainly nowhere near like a terrible on-screen romance or anything, and it makes up a relatively small percentage of the movie. Most of this movie is about Andrew Garfield being a deeply religious fellow. This is a movie definitely geared towards a more Christian audience, and it's good to have one of those that doesn't suck. We're not getting God's Not Dead or Kirk Cameron Saving Christmas. Oh my God. But of that ilk, no, this is a movie aimed towards the Christian audience that actually does treat them with intelligence and respect, where it talks about his issues of faith and how literally this man takes the thou shalt not kill part of the Bible, while at the same time wanting to help the war effort and the struggles he goes to try to reconcile these two contradictory things. And for a film that glorifies this pacifist, this man who swears off violence, man, the second half of this movie, where it really gets intense, it doesn't hold back 1 inch on the bloody horrors of war. This movie features some of the most brutal war scenes I've ever seen in a movie, and that is saying something, because I've seen a lot of brutal war films. This film really shows you every little gritty detail of the horrors of war. And some of the CGI effects on there looked a little bit cheap. The movie's budget wasn't really that high. But overall, it had a really realistic and very intense feel to these sequences. And these sequences are incredibly, not entertaining. That would be the wrong word, but very involving. Very hard, both hard to sit through, and yet something you can't look away from. And it's really interesting to see this man's story. This is a true story of a very unique and very brave fellow that really, if anything, should have been made into a movie a while ago. And I'm really glad that we got a movie of this man's life in such a really good way. So overall, regardless of how you feel about Mel Gibson, you can think he's a drunken piece of crap, a racist, what have you. And maybe he is. Who knows? I mean, those rants were pretty hard to defend, but he really is a fantastic filmmaker. He knows how to craft a fantastic, compelling movie. Movies like Braveheart, one of the best movies ever made. Apocalypto, very underrated, great movie. Passion of the Christ. I'm an atheist, and even I can appreciate that movie's cinematic craft. Overall, Gibson is an incredibly talented filmmaker, and I think it's really good that he came out of retirement and all the negativity surrounding him and gave us another great movie. So I do recommend Hacksaw Ridge. Despite a few problems with it, it's still a more than worthy experience at the cinema. All right, it's intense, it's heartfelt, it is, and it feels very real. It feels realistic and good. Overall, Hacksaw Ridge gets my recommendation. I hope everyone has a great day. Goodbye.